Papa's home for lunch! The late Gujarati summer sun blazed directly overhead, making it unbearable to be outdoors for even just more than a few minutes. Papa entered through the gate I'd opened and came into the garden. Seeing me approach him for a hug, he glared at me angrily. "Here, you've no excuse not to drink your milk now." His face dripped beads of moisture from the heat, and his eyes were on fire. He thrust a large tin of Bonvita cocoa powder into my arms, flinging me back. The metal tin dug into my ribs and hurt me. "Why are you such a spoiled brat? Why can't you be a good girl like the other normal kids and just drink your milk?" He glared at me, and my legs wobbled like a jack-in-the-box on a wiry coil spring as I tried to move them along to keep up with him, while he rolled his bicycle to rest on one side of the garden wall. I felt dizzy and faint. "Do you have any idea how much this tin costs? It's exorbitant. It's exorbitant 105 rupees. He grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me with all his heated frustration. I, meanwhile, looked at him, gripped with shock, dumbstruck. The sun bore a hole in the crown of my head, and Papa's words landed on my ears like burning bricks. Why was he angry with me, like never before? What had I done wrong? Had I been naughty? Why was he tearing me apart for being a juggly, a spoiled brat, when I was doing my absolute to be the opposite, doing my utmost to be a really good girl? Why was he tearing me apart for being a juggly, a spoiled brat, when I was doing everything in my power, absolute power, to be the opposite, doing my utmost to be a really good girl? My legs turned to jelly, while my head rang hollow with the words, "I'm a burden to Papa, I'm a burden, he doesn't want me." To make my Papa proud of my schoolwork? And recounting to him my every little accomplishment, that was my daily occupation. And his anger made me feel ashamed of myself. Not only was he not proud of me, but it was worse, much worse. He was angry with me. He was ashamed of me. These unbearable thoughts flashed in my 9-year-old head, and like the sun's rays, bored deep into my psyche in an instant. Stunned and unable to be with the trauma of disappointing Papa, I felt weak and utterly powerless to carry myself. And though overwhelmed by the afternoon midday heat, I froze. The tin of Bonvita chocolate powder escaped from my hands as he squeezed my shoulders with his fury, and my legs gave way. I collapsed onto the hot earth of our garden. The force of the tin went crashing to the ground and compelling its lid open, scattering the cocoa granules on the earth. Then, as I fell to the ground, something happened that I will never forget. I felt myself being pulled out of my body, floating in the air as if there were two of me. One of me on the ground and the other above, outside of my body and up in the air. The higher I went, the cooler the sun became. A gentle breeze blew my hair and I passed through cotton-soft white clouds that made my skin moist, as if someone had wiped my face with a cool, dampened towel. I looked around, only to realize that there was no one else but me. This gave me the strangest feeling, and goosebumps rose on my brown arms. Should I be excited or nervous? I looked beneath and saw our whole neighborhood as a string of joined-up, colorful dots. Far from being a large place in which I was used to running around, Motabai's house had become just a tiny little speck among a sea of dots, bordered by the blue blanket of the Arabian Sea. His car was visible, but a bleary fleck, like a full stop, lost on a crowded page. Fascinated, I hung around as time stood motionless. Then from behind the clouds, I saw a speck glistened. A glint of sparkling light grew gradually larger as it came towards me, revealing its form. I realized that it was a bird, a large white bird with broad, elegant wings. It looked familiar to me, but I wasn't sure why. Though the appearance of this creature surprised me, it all felt a bit like a dream. Out of the blinding light of the sun, a magnificent, huge white swan flew towards me. It clenched a beautiful white lotus blossom in its beak. I recognized it from the pictures on our home shrine. It was the swan on which Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge, flew. The bird came closer and looked at me. "Hello, little Tiku," it spoke to me telepathically. Did he know me? How did he know my pet name? "Hello," I said. "You look like the picture of Goddess Saraswati's swan that's in our shrine. Are you the same bird as that one?" Though it was a big swan, I thought it was pretty and not frightening at all. "Yes, that's true. That's me." "Does that mean I've died and I'm on my way to heaven now?" I asked, hovering up in the clouds. "No, silly, not at all." It had the sweetest voice. "You know you shouldn't be up here, don't you? What are you doing up here, little Tiku?" "I'm miserable and sad because my papa's ashamed of me. And I'm a burden to him and nobody wants me." I was overcome with emotion. "Silly, why do you think he's ashamed of you? He's not ashamed of you. That's just what you think. You're a numpty, aren't you?" Goddess Saraswati's swan said, but in a kind, light tone. "Yes, he is. Why else would he say I'm a spoiled brat? When I'm trying so hard to be a really good girl, it must be true," I said, weeping and sniffling and feeling the raw intensity of rejection. "Motima and Auntie Anna have left me too. It must be because what Papa says is true. And now Papa doesn't want me either. How can I ever be happy now?" "Listen to me, sweetheart. I'm going to tell you a secret. And it's a secret that I want you to remember every single day for the rest of your life. Will you do that for me?" The white swan flexed its huge wings and came closer, shielding me from the scorching light of the sun with its wings. As it did so, I felt a soothing breeze sweep over me, making me cooler and calmer. "Yes, I'll do that for you." My anguish lessened. More than being afraid, I was suitably impressed by this large, majestic bird. You see, sometimes in life, things are not how they seem. The happiness you're scared of losing is not with Motima or Auntie Anna or your mummy or your papa. You see, little girl, the secret is that this happiness is already inside you. Its words were soothing and sweet like honey. "But if it's inside me, why haven't I seen it? And why do I feel so lonely all the time? Where is it hiding?" I asked. "Ah, well, that's something you'll have to look for. Like when you play hide and seek and you have to find where your friend is hiding?" The swan smiled. "Oh, I see." Tears still rolled down my flushed cheeks. I nodded slowly, like I'd seen Motabai do, as if I understood, but fully having no clue. From high on up, I looked down at my grandfather's house. Everything looked hazy and distorted, as if I was seeing through a mist. But why does everything look so cloudy and misty? Why can't I see clearly? That, sweet child, is because you're seeing things through a veil, Saraswati Swan said. "Oh, but what's a veil?" "You know what a veil is. You've seen it. It's when women pull their saris over their heads and across their face so that others can see them and they can only see others like you're seeing now, all hazy and distorted," the swan said. "That's how grown-ups see things in life." "Oh, I see." I felt fascinated, even if I didn't really understand. Is that why it's a secret? Because grown-up can't see through their veils that happiness is inside them and not outside with other people? You're a smart little Buffy, aren't you? I chuckled. No one had ever called me a delicious Indian sweetmeat made from milk powder. It was one of my favorite sweets. So remember the secret I've told you. And remember too, as you grow up, don't fall into the trap of seeing things hazy and distorted through the veil. Let the veils fly away lightly and easily. The swan fluttered its wings and flew off a little way before settling gracefully beside me again. I nodded, taking everything in the bird was telling me. Will you promise me something else? The bird impressed its words on me with such sweetness that I was like a candy cotton cloud in its wondrous white wings. I nodded again. When you've removed enough of your own veils, will you then help others to do the same and discover their true selves too? I thought about it for a moment. Will you come back and remind me again if I forget? I will, little one, I surely will. But look what I've brought for you today. The swan came closer still. Open your hands and make a cup with them. I did as it asked, and the swan dropped a soft, silky lotus blossom into my hands. Hold the blossom close to you and drop it inside your heart, the swan said, placing the tip of its beak on the center of my chest. It will help you to remember what's important in life and what brings real happiness. At times, you will forget, but don't worry. When the time is right, you'll remember again. With these words, it flew back into the light from where it had emerged. It left me with a message that lingered and echoed within me even after I could no longer see its form. Remember the words you heard when you were sitting in front of your home shrine all those years ago? You're taken care of, in heavens and on earth. I then fell back to earth. It was as if my two bodies, the one that had been flying above and the one that had been lying below, reconnected. I wanted to lie there in half-asleep state for longer, holding on to that fading, sweet, dulcet tones of the swan for as long as I could. After a while, I don't know exactly how long, I finally opened my eyes and saw Papa, Motabai, and our cook fussing over me.